The background of this is a mixture of burnt umber, ultramarine blue, and alizarin crimson, which gives us an almost black color. One of the reasons I'm using this mixture instead of a pure black for the background is I'm also going to use this to darken some of my colors up, and if I use a pure black it's going to come out grayish and muddyish, and I don't want to use that. This piece is 7 by 7 on gesso board, which is made by Ampersand, and I'm just filling in the background. I'm using an angled Robert Simmons brush. It's kind of a small brush, and I'm being really careful of the edges as I go. Once I have the background laid in, I'm going to use this mop brush, and I'm pulling on it to make sure there's no loose hairs, because I'd rather have the loose hairs come out now than into my painting. And I'm just very lightly going over it just to smooth out my strokes. Now with the yellow and a little bit of the background color, I'm putting in this top edge of the glass, which is in the background. It goes from a little bit of a grayish yellow to more of a pure yellow. I've got a little bit of white here. I'm going to lighten this one edge. And underneath the rim of the glass we're seeing the dark background through it, so I'll just lay my black color in, my dark color. And I've got a smaller brush at this point, smaller area, smaller brush. This one's also angled. I really like the angled brushes for these small pieces. Now with cadmium yellow and lemon yellow mixed together, I'm going to start laying in the yellow of the candy corn. I'm not going to show you how to paint every piece of candy corn in this. I'll just give you an idea of how I did a few of them. And I've added some cadmium red to the cadmium yellow and a little alizarin crimson to make this orange color. That's the basic orange of the candy corn. And for the darker shadowed colors of the candy corn, I've added in a little bit more alizarin crimson and a little bit of the background color. And I'm just laying down some of my darker shadowed areas. Just putting them in. I'll blend it in a few minutes with the orange mixture. Now with a little bit of the orange color, I'm laying that down and I'm blending it. And here I've added just a little bit of white to make a highlight, and again with the same brush I'm blending it all in together. I'm also going into the yellow a little bit and smoothing the edge between the yellow and the orange, blending it a little more. Here's some more of the pure orange that I mixed up. And I'm just blending it with what I already put down for the shadow color. And I'm blending it with the paint I've already laid down. And a little bit of white. Back to the orange color. And again with the white. And because I'm mixing it in with the paint, it's turning a lighter orange. I'm not getting a pure white. And now I have my mop again, my mop brush, and making sure it was clean, there was no background color, just smoothing up some of the colors. I'll show you how I did this little piece of corn in the back too. That's my shadow color made with the orange mixture, Alizerin Crimson, and the background color. And now I'm adding in yellow because this piece in the back that we're seeing is actually a yellow piece. And I'm blending it with my shadow color. A little bit more of the shadow color. We're going to skip ahead a little bit here. Got a little bit of my yellow mixture. Even though this piece of the candy corn is white, it's reflecting yellow. I have a little bit of the background color mixed with white for my shadow areas. And I'm just looking back at the reference picture and deciding where the shadow is. Now with a purer white, I'm going in and I'm putting the white down and I'm very softly blending it into the shadow color that I already put down. Now with a clean mop brush I go in again and I just soften the shadows and the detail that I've put in. Always make sure your mop brush is clean and that you're not going to be putting in a color from the background or something that you've already used. I've got a lot more Alizerin Crimson and the background color mixed with the orange for this. This is quite shadowed in this area. Always referring back to my reference picture to see where the shadows go. And the nice thing about these angled brushes is I could use the edge of it to get a pretty straight, clean line, or I can lay it down a little bit and fill in more area. Putting down my darkest colors first for this piece. Although I may go back in and put a little bit darker colors in. Let's make this a little darker right here. Along the edge of where the glass is, it's a little darker. So I put a little bit more background color in. Darken that up just a little bit more. Taking my time, not rushing. Let's make that just a little bit darker still. Cleaned off my brush, and now with the same brush I'm blending it. When I say I cleaned it, I just wiped it. I didn't put turpentine on it or any kind of a solvent. I didn't want it wet. I just wanted most of the paint wiped off. And this edge has just got a little bit more orange to it than the rest of this piece. Now inside here where the light is hitting, it's partially orange and partially yellow. So looking at my reference picture, I'm deciding where the orange is. And I'm blending it a little bit into the shadow, but I'm not blending it too much because there's a pretty strong line there. I'm seeing a pretty strong line between the shadow and where the light's hitting. So I've added a little bit of yellow at this point. And I'm just softly blending it together, wipe my brush off. Put a little bit more yellow in here, a little bit purer yellow. And a little bit of white for a highlight. And then back with the mop brush to blend it all in real soft. Now, when we do the edge of this glass, what I have on here is yellow and white, and it's got a little bit of the background color in it. And I have to follow the curve of the glass. Now I've got a little bit more yellow. This is where you really need to look at your photo reference and see where the dark areas are and where the yellow areas are and the white areas and the orange. Because the glass being clear, we're either seeing through the glass or we're picking up reflections off of the glass. So here's the background color. I'm looking at my reference picture. I'm seeing where this dark area is. Really taking my time, making sure the curves are right, making sure it's blended right. And for this glass, I really need to clean my brush in between. If I'm going to switch colors, I don't want any of the colors blending unless I really intend for them to blend. So here we're seeing through the glass, but it's also reflecting some of the colors of the candy corn. So we're going to start with the background color. And I'm going to make my decisions as to what colors need to go where. So I'm just putting in my darkest areas. When you're doing glass, you also need to decide what you want to leave out, because sometimes glass can really reflect a lot, and putting in too much detail in the glass will distract from it. And instead of making it super realistic, we'll actually make it look like you tried too hard. Like there's too many things, it's too busy, too much going on. So I've got a little bit of orange that I've added in. Now I didn't clean my brush in between because the orange is kind of dark. And it is blending right into the background color. And a little bit more of the orange and Alizarin crimson mixture in here. And there's no sharp lines within this piece. Inside right here where we're seeing the glass, we're seeing the reflection of the background. So I'm just taking my brush and smoothing it along the way as I go. And darken this up just a little bit more. Now I've got the background mixture mixed with some white to give me this gray that I'm seeing. And again, you need to look at your reference picture so you can follow the curve. Darken that up just a little bit. You need to follow the curve around. And you aren't going to get the full effect of the glass until you're almost done with it. So at this point it may not look like much. Looks a little darker in through here. Break it down in your mind. Look for just the dark areas and see where they are, and then look for just the orange areas and see where they are, and the white areas. I'm going to put some over, go all the way across with this color now. Just trying to clean this area up a little bit. I have a little bit of white on my brush and it's mixing with what I already have down, which is okay. I'm just trying to clean it up, following the curve around. If you lose the curve or you make a mistake, just go back in and fix it. Don't freak out, don't worry about it. Now I'm starting to put the candy corn that we see in the rim of this jar or this glass. It's almost like a magnifying glass. We're seeing very distorted pieces of candy corn, and it's the same colors as the candy corn. A little bit brighter underneath. Coming in with my yellow mixture. Got just a little bit of white in it to lighten it a little bit. And I'm blending it. Pulling some of that top color down into this and lightening it just a little bit on this edge. This doesn't need to be exact. If you don't have it exactly like the photo reference, that's fine. You need to get the idea of it, the gist of it. I'm putting in the yellow where I see the yellow and the orange where I see the orange, and if it looks a little darker or lighter in some areas, I'm adding a little bit of the background color or a little bit of the white as it's appropriate. Again, at this point it doesn't look like much. If you squint a lot of times, it will help you to see where the areas of color or darkness is a little bit better. If you take it out of focus with your eyes, you can see, just blocks of color or blocks of shadow. I don't want any really hard edges in here, so I'm keeping everything kind of soft. I used a projector to draw this on. I could have drawn it out by hand, but it would have been a lot more time consuming. And what I really wanted to do was just get into the painting and not spend all my time drawing. So I've got my lines in where the candy corn is and where the edges of the glass is. And I'm using that as my guide. I can change them a little bit as I go if I feel it's appropriate. So these are all the pieces of the candy corn that we're seeing through the edge of this glass, and they're very distorted. But we're breaking it down into shapes and colors, adding shadow where necessary and highlights where necessary. And for this I'm using the same brush to lay everything down and to blend it. A little bit of orange reflected there. And this is a little tiny version of the candy corn. Make sure you keep that curve at the right angles. Your drawing should help you do that. Now I've got pure white. I've got a clean brush and pure white, and I'm wiping my brush off in between putting this color down. These are my highlights, and I want them very pure white. I don't want them to mix in with anything else. So I put some down and I wipe off my brush before I pick up more white. I want this really clean white. That's especially important with glass. Just looking where my white highlights are. You can see at this point it's starting to take the shape of the glass. Now here I've filled in the candy corn again. I didn't want to take the time to paint each piece. And down at the bottom here there is some white reflected on the glass. So I've got white on my brush, and it's not a pure white. So I'm putting it down and I'm letting it blend with the wet paint underneath just a little bit. Okay, now what we're seeing here is mostly the background color through the glass, and what we're seeing is the background color, and then there's some light spots reflected off of it. Again, what you're going here is just the idea of what you're seeing. You don't need to do it exact. You don't need to put every single reflection and every single spot in. You need to take a look at it and decide what's important and what's not so important. You don't want to overdo it. You don't want to put too much detail in. This is lighter than the background color, so it's the background color with a little bit of white added to it. And as it gets a little lighter, I'll add some white to my brush without cleaning it off. A little bit darker in through here. And what this reflection actually is a window. So we're seeing a window with crossbars in it. And make sure you don't lose the curve of the glass. You don't lose the shape of the glass as you're doing this. So right now I'm putting in my dark areas, my really dark areas. And some of the lines I'm keeping pretty clean, and some of them I'm blending in. Again, looking at my reference picture to decide which is which. I've kept the background color on my brush, and I added a little bit of white for this area, and as I'm painting it's just blending in itself, just mixing right on the board. deciding where my highlights are, where my light is coming in, reflecting off of the glass. A little bit more white. I want this a little bit lighter right here. But again, I didn't clean my brush, so it's mixing in with what I already had on the brush. And just putting my crossbars in. And there's the finished piece.